This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, everybody, hello and welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. You guys know what we do in this podcast. We talk about business and marketing tips to help assist you in your business journeys. You know me, the host, Daniela, and Penji's partnership coordinator. And we have a very special guest today, Dan Baird.
Baird, you had it.
Baird from Wrench AI. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm lucky and better than I deserve to be. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. But before we get it started, before we start the whole thing, I do have a game prepared for us to play to break the ice a little bit. So it's a really funny game. Basically, I'm just going to read you some stuff, and I want you to tell me if this is an actual startup or just a sci-fi plot.
It is an actual startup. We've been doing it for 8 years, so I think we may even be past the startup phase at this point.
No. I'm going to read some prompts for you. Yeah. No, not talking about you.
Go. All right, I was about to say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm going to read you some prompts, and I just want you to tell me if what I'm reading is an actual startup that exists.
Yeah. All right, let's play.
Or if it's a sci-fi plot. Yeah. So the first one says, an AI company that generates your voice after 3 seconds of audio.
That's real.
Yeah, it's called 11 Labs. Correct. Next one, a wearable device that lets dogs translate thoughts into English phrases on a screen.
That's probably also real, but I'm going to say it's fake for all intents and purposes in this game.
It's a sci-fi plot. Yeah, for now, who knows? We might get some pioneers who might want to make this into an actual startup. A tech firm that stores human memories in the cloud and replace them as immersive VR experiences.
So, according to Ray Kurzweil, we are supposed to be to the point where we're uploading brain and memories into the cloud right about now. So I'm going to say that's potentially a real one.
Oh my God. That's terrifying. That's a plot from Black Mirror, and I made it into...
we're close to that one being real.
That's terrifying we're living in a Black Mirror reality. Okay, that's a wake-up call for me. Not a fun game anymore.
Yeah. What's the Elon Musk one? Neuralink? That's what Neuralink was. So
yeah, the Elon Musk
coming. We're about there. Keep going. What else you got?
Next one is last one. Startup offering AI-generated companions that live in your phone and talk you through an emotional crisis.
Oh, I believe that one's real. I get asked for that one a lot, actually. I've gotten asked for that one several times.
That is real. It's called Replica.
There you go.
So I'm assuming we will end human civilization one day because we will all be dating bots. So
they're easy to get along with. So
yeah, they do what you want. Honestly, yep. Have you seen the thing where people talk about ChatGPT and how they just rely on it so much for emotional support?
It can. I did find I had my moment with what was that, Anthropic, probably like a year ago, where I was playing with their dictation, was relatively new at the time. So I programmed it to basically be a snarky kind of version of myself. I'm like, I want you to swear. I want you to cuss a little bit. I want you to be a little bit puckish in terms of your person, and found myself talking to the thing like 10 minutes later into a conversation. I'm going, holy crap, I just forgot that this was just software, and was actually enjoying the conversation. So it's coming.
It's coming. There was like an electricity failure in Spain this week. And they had no electricity in the whole country for 4 hours or something, right? Yes. And everybody was freaking out. And this girl, I saw her video on TikTok, so might not be, I don't know how reliable that source is, but she was talking about her experience with the blackout, and she was like, the worst part for me was not like the trains not running. She said what she missed the most was ChatGPT for like those 4 hours because she couldn't talk to ChatGPT, and it was like that's where we're at.
It's
Your
the
first
real
thought.
deal. When you get everything cut off, like people are not prepared for that type of situation. They don't realize how quickly everything goes to poop
Yeah.
when you're in that scenario. We had it happen here once where just my neighborhood went out for like a week, and you better believe it was a different living experience almost
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah,
So.
I think for people from like countries like that, it's hard because I'm from El Salvador, so I'm very used to that. It
Sure.
happens here all the time.
Mhm.
I actually like my colleague is American, and every time I tell her like, "Hey, my internet's gone," or like the electricity's gone this morning, so like you have to wait for me until I get it back to like finish this project, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I hope you're okay," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like, like for us, it's like a casual thing because it happens so much. Um, and then, yeah, I know like for places like that, it can be a big deal. And like to be fair to Spain, I mean, it was gone for a lot of hours and then the whole country. So it's like, yeah,
Sure.
like
Sure.
everything stopped.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great way to start the podcast,
I like
Dan.
it. It's clever.
But let's get to know you a little bit because we've talked about a bit about startups in Spain. But tell us about you, everything that we got to know, and about Wrench AI, the actual company that we are talking about today.
Thank you. Yeah. So Dan and I do. My job is to do behavioral analysis using AI. So our job is to take a lot of different inputs that can be in the form of like existing creative email messages, LinkedIn profiles, conversations that you have with people via text, and to basically see if we can help personalize conversations or simplify them. So like I used to do a lot of work developing new products and sitting behind one-way glass to watch how people interacted with prototypes and understanding like what makes them want to buy more, less, whatever. How do we understand how to improve that prototype based off the feedback from like a focus group? And when I would sit there, there was a bunch of like pitfalls, drawbacks, and challenges in doing that, where you'd like watch people just interacting with it. And I'd just be like, hey, if you're in a room with 6 people and one of you just really likes to rag on stuff and just goes, this, like say we're doing food, they're like, this sandwich sucks. They could
Yeah.
make everybody else in the room hate the sandwich, whether or not they really did hate the sandwich. It was just, hey, it's less friction for us to just kind of gang up on the sandwich, and they would do stuff like that. And I found it just super fascinating, and I've always been really fascinated with human behavior. And did my undergraduate degree in argumentation and decision making to understand like the psychology of persuasion and just techniques and basically communication. Wrench is and was basically coming out of a digital agency that focused on equity fundraising, like for investors, startups, real estate, stuff like that. And going, hey, when we saw people that made big mistakes and they failed, they didn't raise the capital that they were looking to, and we saw people that were successful, a lot of the time the same things were happening in really big companies as small companies. It was one of them really understood who to talk to and what to say to them and how to say it, and the other ones didn't. And so Wrench is the software version of how do we basically make data-driven segmentation work? How do we basically take those little tiny little signals that are embedded, say, in our text threads and stuff like that, and understand how those can be turned into recommendations for communication that help us have a better conversation. So I get to focus on, if someone uses 3 exclamation points in their text messages, they're more likely an extrovert. And so if you're actually talking to them and you're trying to launch your new product and you go, hey, here's 5 other people that that's actually a better way to position your product than someone who's really, really data driven and introverted, right? There's really cool little nuances like that you can use to embed and then ultimately personalize messages. So Wrench plugs into your CRM. It can plug into PPC and like your ad marketplace distribution network. Understand what you're saying and then give you recommendations on how to actually say it more impactfully using data. So like unlike a ton of the other companies that do this, we actually have data to back up our recommendations and we can share that with you. So when it really matters, when you want to avoid A/B testing, when you really need to go, hey, we only have one shot at this whale of a client, we have cool tech that basically helps you customize your messaging to adapt to them as an audience. So that's what Wrench is, and that's what we do.
I think that's super cool because when I think of like corporate and marketing and just like business, one of the biggest roadblocks for a lot of companies is communication, whether it's internally and outwardly. Messaging is so complicated. Whether it's like one team having one goal versus fighting with the other, and there's an internal issue, from like a company putting out a branding message or like a marketing campaign and it not hitting the way that they were meant to be. And a lot of times I think it's communication. So I think what you're doing is super interesting. Because I feel like a lot of times it's a great way to bring that sort of perspective from the outside to a message that is probably going to be better communicated, as like you said, when you personalize it to people's nuances.
That's one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, where people go like, oh, if you're building your new company and that new prototype, you should develop your elevator pitch. Which is like, how do you say it in the fewest number of words possible? Can you say and describe your entire company? And this is where you end up getting like, oh, we're the Uber of elevators. And you go, okay, cool. But you got to make sure that they know what Uber is and that they understand the context on elevators. And the reality is the best pitch you can make is one that's already been well adapted to the audience, right? The best salespeople actually ask the most questions because they understand their audience more. And they understand, well, what can I pitch that actually references the world in which they already know and understand? Because if I can describe myself in their terms, the likelihood that they understand me is way, 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 way better. So
for sure. It's fun. I don't know if you saw like a few weeks ago, Katy Perry and other women went to space.
Sure.
And it was really controversial. Like I saw a lot of people talking negatively about this trip. And I think like my personal opinion is just that it was a messaging problem, because I think if they had just, because to me, these trips, like a lot of people don't realize that this was not like the first one. I think it's like the 11th or 10th one that Blue Origin does. But this one has had the most attention and negative attention. And I feel like it's like, if you look at it from like the idea of why this one was so negatively received versus the other 10 trips that they've done before this. It's because I think in a way, these trips are like a sales pitch for Blue Origin, right? Like every time they do this, and to me, it's like they're trying to do this to sell the idea that this company is the future and the innovation and all the things that they want to do in space. They want to industrialize space and like put people living up in the moon and all of the stuff that they want to do. And like these trips are like the way for them to be like, yeah, we're getting a step closer. And I think the problem with that specific trip was that the messaging was so off, because they were making it about like scientific advancement of these women instead of making it like the scientific advancement of sending civilians to space. I think had the messaging been different, the reception would have been a lot different than what it was. And I think that it plays into what you've been talking about, which I just think it was just like, being able to make that pitch better for the people that were going to be receiving it and making the message different, it would have changed everything completely.
That's a really good point. So totally familiar with the premise, right? And it's a common approach. It works, right? Because you're talking about what they call innovation or product adoption, right? They're going, how do we get Blue Origin out to the right people? And of course, yes, so they go get a bunch of people that have a huge audience themselves, right? You figure out the technology. And then once you do that, you go basically try to find influencers. They can be journalists, they can be reporters, they can be celebrities, they can be whatever. One of the weird things that you find out about those, yes, it totally matters, but their audience also matters. And yes, because it boils down to, they use the word astronaut. And astronauts usually have 3 PhDs and several other things that are ridiculously hard to pull off. So civilians that go to space, that's actually closer to probably what some of them were. I know they did have some scientists on that flight, but you're right. It was a position it's a big deal. You find out like this actually happens more than people think. Like when you realize there's things called primary and secondary socialization. So if you even think about just the word love, and you go, love, like I went and lived in China. You traveled a lot too. I checked, right? You've been to Taiwan and stuff like that. When you go to Asia, the word love almost has a different connotation than it does to us in the West, right? Like it is like, yes, they totally understand love. But oftentimes, like when it comes to marriage and stuff like that, you found out like that in places like China, they actually had a lot of relationships that were like very much like a relationship of like economic or socioeconomic status, right? They didn't necessarily do it for love reasons the way we try to over in the West, right? And you're going, oftentimes the word love is associated with what you saw your parents do and interact with one another, right? So it's like, well, what if, well, you could say, well, they love each other, but what if one's like a domestic abuser? It's like, well, that's why kids can grow up and go, no, no, no. I love my significant other, even if I abuse them, because their parents did. They described love that way. It's totally normal to them because when they grew up, that is what love meant. And you find out that those nuances are actually really, really, they're all around you, right? People use that word. I grew up in a different context. And because of that, you can even say the same word and have it mean totally different things. You can say something that is absolutely false, but have it create an honest and a truthful, receptive message in your audience. Right? There's oftentimes weird situations that you get into. I do this in artificial intelligence all the time where people are trying to go, hey, can you explain how blah, blah, blah technology works? Where I go, I'm going to use the wrong words, but it is going to create the correct opinion and abstract understanding in their head. So I can actually describe something totally wrong, but actually give them the right idea. And that stuff, again, happens around us all the time. It's kind of fascinating. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think it's just like we were talking about, yeah, like probably telling these people, like calling themselves astronauts was like a mistake because that's not what they were. But like I said, I think it's just, to me, it was like such a messaging situation because like had you post this as like, you know, the scientific advancement is not that these women are astronauts, is that they are sort of pioneering the idea of sending civilians into space, then we would be discussing the ethics of that instead of whether or not what they did is frivolous. I think like, and I think a lot of the, like what you bring up to me is really interesting because like I do think that AI is so controversial. It brings a lot of people have opposed it, right? And brought up some like I think valid concerns with AI. But I think what you are doing is such a great example of how AI can be a tool that is going to not necessarily replace humans as much as it can just enhance communication. Because we can get something that can like enhance this type of thing without having, like if you were to just do this as a person, having to like personalize a message for every single person of your target audience, even if it's just like a small audience of like 10 people, it is going to take you so much longer than if you're doing this with an AI. And it's going to be so much more complex than if you have a tool that can help you and that you are kind of guiding and sort of steering the wheel still.
So that little miscommunication we had at the beginning of this, where we're playing the game and you're just like, oh, is this Skynet, you know, basically the premise of the question, is this fake? Is this a fake startup or a real sci-fi movie? Because at Wrench, we get that question a lot where they're going, wait, are you inventing Skynet? Are you doing Cambridge Analytica? I get that question regularly. And I go, wait, it's a tool. And by definition, a tool is helpful and can be hurtful. It's your kitchen knife. You can prepare dinner with it. You can cut your finger with it. And the usefulness and the phenomenon that we find out is like, ultimately, Cambridge Analytica is one of those examples where they're going, Cambridge Analytica did a few things and definitely some things that they deserve to get their asses chewed out for, jail, whatever. But profiling an audience is segmentation. We've been doing that forever, right? What they did is stole the data that they actually built that with, and then they created false campaigns that actually encouraged people to not vote using that data. The unethical thing that they really did was how they used the data and what data they used in the process. But if you go and what we find out, people go, well, like, what are the impacts? And like, few of the things. So yes, do you get increases in conversions? Yes. Some of the things that people don't expect is even the no's that you hear from, you shrink the amount of time it takes to get to a yes or a no, just because you remove all the friction from explaining things multiple times. So you go like, hey, wait, I can actually grow your company. And even if you aren't better at converting your audience, you'll actually just get more conversations in the same amount of time because it will be a faster opportunity for them to understand what you're selling and what you're trying to get done so that they can give you an honest, hey, this is cool, or hey, this is actually not for me. And you can move on to the next person. So you can actually grow your business just because you have optimized messaging. Even if you don't get better, you actually ultimately always get better. But even if it doesn't work in that sense of like, hey, we can magically position your product and sell it based on something it can't do. It's like, no, but we can actually help you get much, much faster feedback from that audience that either one moves you on to a next client or gives you better feedback on how to optimize or improve the product so that it does become something that they'd want. Another just weird kind of side and useful benefit from those. And if you look at it there is so much opportunity in the world right now. You're just like, how much time do we spend on just arguing over stuff that doesn't actually matter, but there's a semantic difference or something that causes the whole argument, right? It's that, we said astronauts, you should have said space-based civilians, it's like, we could have avoided the whole problem. So it surrounds us and it causes a lot of inefficiency. And I think the better we get at it, the better, just the better kind of, the cool thing that we found about this, do you know who Steve Wozniak is? You ever heard that name before?
Is he, the guy, I think
he's a co-founder of Apple.
Yeah, he's married to Susan Wozniak, right?
Might be. I don't know his wife's name. But he was, remember Steve Jobs from Apple?
Yeah.
He was his business partner. He was the guy that actually did all the hardware and the creation of the laptop. Steve Jobs was the marketing mind. Steve Wozniak was the engineering mind. And one of the things that we wanted to actually build out of Wrench, the reason that we call this the dent in the universe idea, we want to build something that puts smile wrinkles on our face so that when we die, we can happily die with smiles on our faces and simultaneously do something that really impacts the world. And what we wanted to do was build something, because a ton of people don't have access to a brilliant Steve Jobs that can actually go pitch my idea to the world. I might be a really, really good inventor. I could be a really good product designer, developer, and a really shitty communicator, and no one will ever see my product. And we went, I want to help that person that's in the garage or in the basement of their house, maybe working on a one-person company, actually get their message to the right people and present it honestly in the first way. And we'll go, we will make another Apple that doesn't need Steve Jobs, because we will help that slightly awkward, that brilliant inventor that just may not be the best communicator, help get their idea out of the basement. That is the goal of that. So
yeah, I think that's like really important, because like you said, there's so many miscommunication things that just set back a lot of things. Also a lot of I think lack of understanding of where a person, I mean, whatever opinions we have are influenced by our personal biases and experiences. So, having something in between that can sort of put a different, because I feel like, at least for me, I feel like that's a help that I have found with AI, with the surgence of AI, that is irreplaceable from before we had it, which is that being able to organize my thoughts with it, and being able to kind of have a perspective that is not necessarily just clouded by my own from a robot. Because I think if I ask my friend for an opinion sometimes, I know that her opinion is going to also be influenced by her biases and so forth. And then it's not necessarily that I'm asking an AI for an opinion as much as I'm just I have this opinion, help me work around this idea so that it makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, you hear this oftentimes, the 0 to 1, or every once in a while you hear people say the first million is the hardest. Because building from literally nothing to something is arguably the hardest step that there is to take. As humans, we're really, I was to do this when I'd sit behind in those focus groups and sit behind the one-way glass. If we would sit down 6 to 12 people, and you'd always be surprised, it only took 6 or 12 people, but you could sit behind the one-way glass and go well, what should we make? If they don't have anything in front of them, they all just sit back and just kind of stare at each other. But if you even just took a description of your prototype on a piece of paper, and for anyone listening, if you're building a new product, that is the first step. It's called a concept. 200 words and a picture, title, subtitle, picture, short description of the benefits and features that your product has. Really, really multi-billion-dollar companies will start their prototyping process with just that. Because if you put it in front of someone, they can go through and they can circle words, phrases, features that they like. They can cross out things they dislike. They can put a question mark next to things that they don't understand. And you can actually do a ton of product development with just that much feedback. You can actually get really, really, really far with just that. One of the nuances of what we found, same kind of thing from an AI perspective that I like, is I can take a very rudimentary thought of, hey, I'm kind of thinking that I just want to build, podcast that, fully managed, and it covers this and it covers these people. It talks to agency owners and other people that are working in the marketing space. And it can flush out a ton of like the framework, the chronological overview. I can give you an invite and a conversational thought starter. I can give you the agenda of the conversation. You're like, okay, now I'm already, it floats, most of the stuff in those AI agents, they're working off popularity contests effectively. Like when you use ChatGPT, it's reading the entire internet to find out what do other podcasts say, and then it's regurgitating what most of the popular ones say, right? Cool thing about that is that means that we can jump from 0 to basically an average podcast or whatever that product is almost instantly. But now our passions can take over and we can go, okay, well, now where can I plug in the nuance that makes this thing really, really special? And for that reason, I actually think the creativity, I used to say like, hey, this thing isn't creative because it's just going to regurgitate what people already know. Exactly what you said. I actually think it'll help people get to the spot where they can focus on the nuance and the passions that really drive them, that make it really, really, really interesting to some people that are their audience that do matter. Versus, hey, I've got something average for the average audience. It's like, this will make it easier to find the really nuanced, esoteric, weird individuals that I really want to talk to, right?
It also, I think it's easier for you to pinpoint with an AI what everybody else is doing. Because like the internet is, like you said, like ChatGPT is pulling whatever it is, finding from the internet, and then giving you just that, right? Regurgitating that answer. And I think, for example, for me, if I put my podcast questions, like what I'm going to prepare for every guest that I talk to, if I put the questions on ChatGPT, it will constantly give me the same questions, except for that company or that person that I'm talking to. But it's always like the same type of question.
Format.
Same format, same questions. And if I did that all the time, then I would just be asking the same things to every guest, having the same conversation with every guest, and nothing would change. So what I can do with ChatGPT though is like I understand that like these are the questions that people are getting asked all the time when they're going on these podcasts, right? Because I actually spoke to someone who I like talked to him about something completely different than what he thought we were going to be talking about, and he told me at the end of the podcast, he was like, nobody really asks me any of these questions. Like usually they'll just ask me like about the story of my company and how it got started and, like generic things like that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I tried to do that. I put it on ChatGPT. Those were the questions that I got, but I thought it was kind of boring and I wanted to do something else. And he appreciated that, right? And I think like, had I not been able to use that tool to help me kind of understand like, okay, this is the type of question that is more common, I probably would have just asked him those questions without knowing that another interesting topic would have been more fun for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's worth a lot. When you do like email, generally speaking, like when people do the presentation I was mentioning earlier includes some stuff for personalizing email outreach. And it's from another company. But they found almost the same numbers we did. If you do like just general outbound, you're talking about getting click-through rates that are like 2 to 4%, really pretty small.
Yeah.
If you personalize those messages, it quintuples. It goes up to like 16, 17%. It goes up a ton because you personalize the messages. You really made the context really relevant to them. And if you can highlight things that are meaningful to your audience, they actually reward you. You took some time on me, I will take some time with you. And the likelihood that you have that success goes up dramatically. Also, if you measure that stuff, if you start to understand like, hey, can I, like, this is some of the fun stuff we'll do with, we can measure the words that you talk about with your company and brand. What are the common high frequency words that they use? Can I overlap and look at the high frequency words that my audience uses as well? And it can help me understand, again, which products do I lead with? What type of sales approach do I use? What conversation or products do I lead? Which person should get on the phone in the first place because they naturally have a lot in common, right?
Yeah.
You can find out if you can measure those. It actually becomes another tool that says, cool, well, I originally started with a list. Some people will have them of hundreds of thousands of people and go, you only need to talk to like 5,000 of them. Don't waste spam. Do all this becomes a huge waste-saving, time-saving protocol. It becomes a tool, and one of those huge benefits is I didn't talk to a ton of people that I shouldn't have in the first place. Everybody wins, right? We don't send stuff. We don't waste time on things we don't have to. And it's so easy to have those conversations, especially when it's naturally aligning people that already have a lot in common, that life's easier. The whole thing just becomes, it feels less like work. It's pretty crazy.
Also, imagine having to go because the other option would be okay, let's pre-vet them before we actually reach out, but manually having to
the
sit down.
discovery call type of thing.
Yeah, having to manually sit down and do research on hundreds of thousands of people just to figure out that 5,000 were the ones that you were meant to be talking to.
So what we found is you can use tools that do this, but when you do the math, the amount of work that you really should do, and if you go look, the most successful salespeople spend the most time doing prep and research, right? Same thing. They ask the most questions. They do the most so they can skip the questions and ask more meaningful ones. We did the math. This was from years ago, right? When we started the company, but we found out that we did about 6 months worth of research per salesperson. We're going, hey, if all they did was sit down and research their audience and, spent an hour per contact, you're doing SaaS sales or account-based marketing. You're going, yeah, this is basically, if we spent the equivalent to get all this data, it was about an hour and 15 something minutes, I think it was per person. Go, hey, we can do that in about 9 seconds. It's well, that's a fraction of what I was going to pay them. At that speed and rate, I can almost just pop up a profile in front of someone's face in a dossier that they can look at even just a few minutes before a call.
Yeah.
And literally save them hours and hours and hours of research. They can have more conversations in a day, more meaningful conversations in a day, because we can align them with people that they naturally hit it off with. And they're more likely to have natural success without even having to try hard, because we're putting the right people next to it. We looked at a database from a direct sales organization once, and they had 27 million people in the database. And the biggest thing that you noticed when you looked, the people that sold the most didn't train more, didn't upsell more, didn't go through more training. They found people that mirrored their personality, and they just signed up people that were like them. It's oh shit. How do you upscale that? How do you scale that? Oh, you profile and you basically find and put the right people in the right room in the first place. So super cool stuff. Super cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's actually a great note to end the podcast on, because we are running out of time, but it's been great having you today, Dan. But before we finish and wrap it up, I do want to give you the space to tell people where to find you if anything that we spoke about today resonated with them or they want to work with you. Floor is yours.
Sure. I'm at Wrench AI. Go to wrench.ai is our website. You can go see the product there. You can play with some of it. You can sign up for trials there, and you can play with it, and you can actually see this stuff work in real time. You can actually see it work on yourself. So you can actually go look up your own profile and see if we're full of it or not. It's pretty fun. And then LinkedIn /Dan Baird is my URL there. That's probably where I check the most, just because we're doing business to business stuff most of the time. So if you're interested in personalized AI, data-driven, optimized content, hit me up. I would be happy to chat, but no pressure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Danielle.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. I will be adding the links to the description of this video so that people can go in and easily find you and talk to you. And thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. I had fun. Thanks.
And to everybody else, subscribe, follow, links, everything. I will see you on the next episode.
Does good work. Cool. Thank you.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.